Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, I am Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. It was a bit of an inside day. I can always tell because I get punch drunk. I get heavy in my emotions. I sometimes, I'm not going to say doubt myself, but at the very least, I question what I'm doing. I am never, ever a give up kind of girl. I never have. And some of that content has been coming across my path, but I think it's in a way to trick me, to entice me, to say, maybe this is an option for you, Cindy. And for me, I am that person that pushes back at what pushes me. I understand, that it's in my choices. And if you've been hanging out with me for any length of time, you know what a big play this word choice is making in my life. And I think it's something, especially in this day and age, and I think in any day and age, no matter what generation you come from, but in this moment, we're the ones with those cards, right? Those people 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, they had the same opportunities to make choices in their life. They might not have had the same tools that we are privileged to have, but they did have choices, didn't they? In this day and age, oh my goodness, I talked about it a little bit yesterday about the world being an appetizer platter, that each one of us has an opportunity to make choices in our life and make some movement to pull away from, from what feels not uncomfortable, because we should feel uncomfortable when we're making change, but move away from that which rubs us badly, right? And we understand that some people are in a sad state, in a bad state. And I am that person who would lend my shoulder, lend my ear, lend my time, lend my physicality. I am grateful for my good health at 65 years old, that I can still haul and physically move the way I do. I went out with my sister the other day, and she was hurting pretty bad. Her feet have been bothering her. She's got that fasciitis, right, in her feet, and it takes a long time, and it really makes her depressed. And I understand that, when you're not physically feeling well, it affects you mentally. It affects you emotionally. So when I say I take my good health, right? I don't take my good health for granted, that I'm super grateful for my good health. It's for that fact that it doesn't put me in that frame of mind, right? That state in my life that might put me in a negative frame of mind and leave myself open to something possibly negative coming in, right? I've seen it happen so many times. And sometimes I've seen it happen to beautiful people, like truly beautiful, beautiful people. And they've gotten themselves in that state and left themselves open, and they've changed into somebody, like I said, that doesn't rub us well, right? And we don't always have that opportunity to recognize, right, that somebody's going down the hole. Or maybe we recognize that, and we think about, we don't want to go down the hole too, right? We don't want to go down with that ship. And what do? We abandon. We move away from what feels uncomfortable. There have been so many times in those relationships that I've kind of moved away. Now, I didn't move away for the fact that they made me feel uncomfortable, but maybe in a way they did, because we all change. We all make choices in our lives. And sometimes, right, I'm a big believer in change. I'm a big believer in making choices and moving towards those changes. But sometimes we choose things that aren't good for us, right? We choose to let ourselves get punch drunk. We allow ourselves to doubt. We allow ourselves to go down that rabbit hole where we think that nothing can possibly work out for ourselves, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like, when we leave ourselves open to these ideas, like, how is it welcoming to anything positive? Who wants to be around that? Everybody's jumping ship. Everybody's abandoning us, and we find that we're left on our own in our miseries. And what does that do? It makes us more miserable. And the more miserable we get, right? The more miserable we get, right? And I've learned that to be true. So when I say I'm grateful for my good health, it's for the fact that I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to deal with feeling mentally and emotionally down, down to the state where I can't pull myself out of anything, right? That I'm right. I've got too many lessons under my belt, right? I push back at what pushes me. And it would be uncomfortable for anybody or anything that is in that negative state to rub badly with me, because, right, I would have to move away. I would have to move away because, again, I have too many lessons around my belt. And I have tools, I most definitely do, but I don't have all the tools. I don't have all the answers. I'm not the be all to end all. I'm not the all seeing. I'm not the Wizard of Oz. And I recognize that. It's why I am out there and I am learning, but I want to learn from the best. I want to learn from people who do have those answers where I don't have those answers. But I sure would love to pass those gifts along, all those tools that I have picked up, right? From all different sources, all different frames of mind, right? Different places, different personal experiences, and living vicariously through other people's experiences, been able to pick up lessons from there. But I think the biggest wake up call for me were the experiences in my own life, right? That even without realizing it, I was my best teacher, right? In some of these ideas that came across my path, that, even if life kicked me down, that I was just going to get right back up, that I deserved to have the best life for myself as I possibly could create for myself, no matter the circumstances, no matter what anybody said, no matter, what life threw at me, right? I would always find a way to sing in the rain, or is it dance in the rain, right? Whistle while I work, right? Smile sometimes, even when I felt like crying. And I did a lot of that. I did a lot of that. But at the same time, I have to say, hello, Eugene. Hello, Eugene. First one in tonight. I'm happy to see you, dear. I'm happy to see you pop in. Oh, and Tammy's in here too. Hello, Tammy. Hello, Tammy. We were just talking about, well, I was talking about the negativity, but the conversation I wanted to have was about positivity, right? The gift of keeping a balance. It doesn't necessarily have to swing so high that it seems fanatical, that it seems phony and ungenuine, right? But how about some balance, right? A little bit of good, a little bit of bad, without those high swings back and forth, because that's what gives you the punch drunk, right? That's what discourages you because you go to those highs, right? Those beautiful moments, and then all of a sudden something kicks you in the butt and you go downhill again. And then you have to spend so much energy in crawling out again to getting yourself to a state at the very least that you're balanced again. I'd always like to keep a little bit higher balance than the negativity. And I only know that from my own experience because I have put myself in states of negativity. I have been projected on. I have created it for myself. I have delved in to topics that have made me really take a look at this aspect of negativity and how it shows up. And it doesn't show up in everybody. Like I said, we don't want to be phony, right? We want to be genuine in our aches and pains, in our sadnesses, in our grief, right? Because if we're not genuine in it, then there is no opportunity for somebody who does have those tools to recognize that and offer a shoulder, offer an ear, offer a little bit of insight if they can handle it properly, right? You can't just say, smile, everything's going to be okay, right? I say that all the time, but that's because I recognize through my own experience that everything in the end is okay. But not everybody has that lesson. It's kind of like when somebody walks by you on the sidewalk and you say, oh, how are you today? And somebody goes, fine. Right? For myself, I would read right through that and I'll go, what's up? What's going on? Right? But lots of people would say, oh, that's nice, and walk away knowing, right, that something is not well, right? That somebody might be just trying to not drop their problems or their issues on somebody else. And even though they picked it up that there was something that was their out. And when I talk about abandoning, right? That's what I'm talking about. When we're capable of helping, we should help. We should lend a shoulder to cry on or an ear to listen to somebody's woes and offer up advice if we do have those tools around our belt, right? But it has to be genuine. It really does have to be genuine because, as humans, right, we can read through that in a minute. And if we feel like somebody truly doesn't care, then why bother even trying, right? So we keep our woes to ourselves. It's not like that in my family, right? I've never been that way with my woes. If there was a problem, I was the biggest crybaby. I don't get sick very often, but if I catch a cold or a flu or I hurt myself badly, right? I'm a big whiner. And that's the truth. I am, and I'm sorry for that. And if you can't handle that, then right, I welcome you to walk away in that. But that's who I am. And you never know who somebody has. Well, Tylenol, Cindy, take a couple of Tylenols, rub your feet. When I got fasciitis, and being able to offer a little advice to my sister the other day when we went out with her fasciitis, I had fasciitis. Mine lasted 9 months. It was the most excruciating pain I had ever gone through, besides my gastric bypass. But oh my goodness, it was something incredible. I almost had to quit my job over it. The only thing that saved my butt was somebody, right, getting a little collection in the paint department in the company that I worked for. And they bought me a special pair of shoes at Mark's Work Warehouse. I put those on, and it took all my weight off of my feet. I had no idea that those shoes would work. I never even knew that those shoes existed, right? But if I hadn't been whining, if I hadn't let somebody know that, oh my goodness, I don't think I can take this anymore, right? Nobody would have known. And in that, I got a big dose of clarity in truth. I got a big dose of, oh my goodness, people care for me to go out of their way. Those shoes were not cheap. They took a collection, they passed that, they got me those shoes. And so I suggested these things to my sister. I gave her all the little tips that I had when I had fasciitis, right? And some of them were like the golf ball, rolling my feet on golf balls, cans of Campbell's soup. I use Campbell's soup. Little golf balls. I use little golf balls. And then my sister suggested, Cindy, I've been doing all of that. She says, but did you know that you could freeze water bottles? And I just went, oh my goodness, I didn't even know that one. If I had known that one, that would have probably been my best trick to try, right? And so we had that conversation. I passed on all those little tips to her. Of course, she had been doing all of them, right? She had done some research on her own. And of course, in my family, like I said, things are bothering us, things aren't going well. We do grumble and complain because we understand somebody, right, has that answer. That answer is out there somewheres, and we live in this digital age where you can just Google, use Gemini, chat GPT, and get these answers in a second. We are so privileged, right, that we have these tools at our disposal, and yet we don't utilize them, right? We don't utilize them. And if we do utilize them, I think that's absolutely amazing, because now that I'm thinking about it, that I was never an asker, right? I never asked for assistance. I came from that family where you didn't talk about your problems, anything to do with the family. You didn't ask anybody for help, right? It was kind of like see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. This is how our family ran. We were a very tight, private family until we turned into teenagers and we started liking boys. But, right, even then, we didn't bring them around the house. Oh, God forbid, right, that I introduced them to my dynamic family, right? But still, you know, I remember just so silent and so quiet and introverted and private in my problems that I just had to suck everything up. I was even programmed, right? A couple of times I got talked into going to see the school counselor, and they were good, right? They were like interrogators and break down, and finally, you would tell the truth, what was going on at home. I did that a couple of times, a few times. I got sucked into that. But in the end, my parents always got a phone call, right? That's why they never went to parent teacher meetings or anything like that, is because they didn't want their private matters discussed. They didn't want to discuss me. They didn't want them to know anything about what was going on in our home. And when these counselors would, in the end, they would just take it upon themselves, even after I said, please don't talk to my parents about this, right? And my mom would get that call, and yeah, she'd be waiting for me when I got home from school. And there were lessons in that. In her perspective, there had to be lessons because that had to stop, right? And so growing up, I learned not to ask. I learned not to speak about private matters within my own family, which is kind of odd because, a lot of my platform is built around my experience because I'm positive. I am 100% positive that it is in my experience that other people are going to relate. It's just not being that evidence for somebody in what can be done, but that evidence for somebody in what can be done, right? And to let them know that they weren't in the boat all by themselves, right? That there was something relatable in my experience to their experience. And in that, find some maybe camaraderie, right? If nothing else, to feel like they're not in it alone. But getting back to this idea that I grew up not asking, when I first woke up to some of these ideas, right? I'm so grateful that I woke up in this age of AI learning because as somebody who could not ask, I could ask Google, right? I can watch content online. I could delve into YouTube creators and thought leadership and topics and health issues, not just physical health issues, but emotional health issues and mental health issues. And that would have been something that would have been totally out of the books, right? 30 years ago, 40 years ago, hasn't been around for that long. We are so privileged to be living in this day and age right now that if we want to, right? If we need to, those answers are at our fingertips, right? Those answers are at our fingertips. And I'm not saying to self diagnose, but you can ask questions, and you can ask questions where the answers will be pertinent and true and to the fact, right? And that's the truth. And lots of options, right? Oh my goodness, here's one for you. I found a little brown spot on my foot. I'd had it for, probably this is my second summer of having this little brown spot. But over the course of the winter, I didn't notice it because I wear socks to bed, right? In the wintertime, because I sleep with my window open and I'm somebody who tosses blankets off and pulls them back on me and then tosses them off. So at the very least, I didn't want to get sick. So I wear socks to bed, right? So summer's here. I'm not wearing socks except when the air conditioner is on me, right? I'm not wearing socks. I'm wearing my sandals. And I noticed my little brown spot was getting bigger. It was like twice the size as it was last summer. And I went, oh my goodness, what's that? I can't even see it right now. So what did I do? I Google Lensed it. And it came up with different options of what it could be, right? It turned out just to be a rub spot, right? Maybe it had gotten a little bit infected under the skin or something. But I put some, what do you call that? Beech tree oil on the spot, and I've been doing that once a week for the past few weeks, and now you can barely see it. It's working, right? But they gave me lots of options. It kind of made me a little bit nervous because they said, oh, maybe it's melanoma, right? But they gave me a whole bunch of options. And so instead of putting myself in a panic and running off to the doctor, and wouldn't have cost me anything to do that. I live in Canada, right? Our medical is taken care of. But I took care of it on my own. I tried this and I noticed right away it was making a difference. So I don't know if it was a rub spot or maybe some kind of fungal spot or something from wearing my socks every day in the wintertime. I don't know what it was. But I did that with Google Lens just by taking a picture of my sore. Like you couldn't have done that 50 years ago. And 50 years ago, I'm not sure if we had that health system that we have now. Probably did, right? But what about in the States, right? You would have run off to the doctor and you would have had to put possibly the money that was for the milk on your kid's cereal to go see a doctor to find out that it was just some kind of fungal spot or something, right? So we do live in an age that offers up an opportunity to serve a little bit in the way that we can ask questions. And when we ask questions, we make choices in those questions. I didn't tell my sister all those little tricks of fasciitis until I knew that she was already in the midst of her inflammation in her feet. And then at that point I gave her everything that I knew, but she had already done her research at that point too. So she was asking those questions. Whereas before we would have relied on our parents or our friends or our partners to give us suggestions in their limited understanding, right? I love being able to have my platforms where I can ask questions and get answers, right? And I don't take it as the be all to end all, right? I'm looking at the different possibilities, and there are different possibilities in that. And in that information, I will make choices, right? And the first thing for myself, I did the beech tree oil. It worked. But if it didn't work, if it got more inflamed or if it turned into something ugly, I would have been at the doctor. I would have made that choice, right? I really love for somebody like me who has a problem. with the ask, right? I appreciate these platforms, but I also understand that when I'm not feeling well, I also have to express that. And it doesn't matter whether or not it's physical, mental, or emotional. I've learned that it's a necessity for me to express that. Because if I don't express that, whoever out there has that answer, right? It might not come across my path. And if that doesn't come across my path, I understand if I'm not feeling well physically, it's going to affect me emotionally and mentally, right? And if I'm not feeling good emotionally, that's going to affect me mentally and physically, right? Because we understand that stress causes 75% of our illnesses, right? And that goes right back to what I was saying. I'm grateful for my good health. Now, I'm pulling out my vitamins because I haven't taken my vitamins all week, right? And if you guys have been hanging out with me for any length of time, you know I formulate my, I think I might even take a B12. Well, I can do that later, but I'll take my B12s today too, right? Because that is for your emotional well being and your mental well being, right? So I formulate to how I'm feeling, right? In the wintertime, I'm taking lots of vitamin C, right? Because I don't want to get colds. I'll also take a lot of vitamin D's. But in the summertime, I won't take so much of the vitamin C because, right, you're not getting sick as you would in the winter and the spring. And I won't take the vitamin D's because I'm outside so much. I get lots of sun, right? I get lots of sun, so there's no necessity in that. But it's in my choices. And I said today, right, Cindy, pull your vitamins out because you're going to take them. You're going to take them for the next week. And yeah, I'm going to probably take one other one too, right? I'll just take, maybe I'll take um, the fish oils. I'm not a big fan of the fish oils, but they are good for you, right? And for somebody who doesn't eat much fish, they're very good for me. Okay, you guys, let's come into happy Friday, by the way, right? It's Friday. Oh my goodness, that week went really, really fast to tell you the truth. Yeah, it was like a blink in an eye for me this week. I hope your guys' week went really well. I hope everybody is feeling good physically, mentally, and emotionally. And if you're not, right, some vitamins, a walk, right? Put on some music if that's what you like. I'm not a big music person, right? I like the quiet because I am, right? I like to do my contemplation. That's my meditation, right? I like to be in my head. I like to be open to ideas and thoughts because if I wasn't, I wouldn't have said to myself, okay, Cindy, you're going to take some vitamins, right? I wouldn't have said to myself, okay, Cindy, right? We're not talking or listening to anything else today that's working on emotions, right? Or understandings or any way. You're done with that for the day because you have gone a little bit deep, because you're a little bit punch drunk with what you're taking in. But because I stayed in today, right? I love to leave myself open to different ideas. And if those ideas aren't coming to me, I'll go searching for them. And that's the thing about making those choices, right? And as soon as you recognize that maybe you made a bad choice, that's the time to make a different choice, right? Before you make a bad choice even worse. And I've done that many times, right? Grateful for the lessons around my belt, grateful for this age of AI learning, grateful for all the great thought leaders out there. I'm grateful for Gemini, right? I'm grateful for Google. I'm grateful for YouTube, right? Throwing out the gratefuls out there. Grateful for my good health. And that's not to say it'll always be that way, right? But in the moment, I'm going to appreciate it because I understand that when you're not feeling well physically, it brings you down emotionally and mentally. And the idea is not to leave yourself open to the negative. So when you're not feeling well physically, mentally, emotionally, it has to be in your choices to do something about it, right? Because it's too much work, it's too much effort, it's too much energy when you're feeling, right? When you don't have to keep going down, slipping further and further down, like you could be pushing up against what's pushing you and do something about it, right? Make yourself some cupcakes, go for a walk, phone a friend, watch a YouTube video, go to a movie, buy yourself a dress, right? Find somebody who will lend you a shoulder or an ear or a little bit of good advice. That's advice for me too. Okay, you guys, it's Friday. I'm happy. I'm happy it's Friday. I'm not a Monday to Friday kind of girl, but I do appreciate my Saturdays being offline. Now, I'm not always offline. I'm usually on the computer, right? But it's usually a lesson day for me where I'm a student and a spectator, but I'm not a participant. I'm not coming in and doing my lives or putting out any posts or anything. So it's an opportunity for me if I choose to get outside with no time limits that I've got to be home at a certain time. It's a day where I'm not going about my day looking to be inspired by a topic of content. And I'm going to have to say, right, I did the same thing tonight. I said, oh my goodness, you were home all day and nothing came to you for a topic of discussion tonight. Didn't need to. All I had to do was hit that live button. It just kind of happens, right? But that's a good thing, right? And I'm getting more and more comfortable with that all the time. But before, right, I made myself a cup of coffee, sat myself down, and went, oh, Cindy, what's a good topic of discussion today? Like I do every day, right? Not like any of them really happen. Every once in a while, and when I get inspired by that, I make my point list and I come in and I try the best I can. But it's not the norm for me. It's not the way Cindy usually works, though I have been practicing as of late. Maybe I should give myself one day, right? But I haven't been inspired that way. It just doesn't come to me that way. So I went to my bookshelf right before I did my live. And it was something that I used to do when I was a little kid with the Bible. I used to do it with all the books. It didn't matter what kind of book it was, right? But if I was looking for an answer, I would grab a book and I would just go to a page, and there would be the answer for me, or something to inspire me, or something to make me feel better. And so I pulled this book. You guys know that I appreciate Jordan B. Peterson. He hasn't been doing well as of late, but I'm sending him out some good cheer, right? He's had a pretty rough more than few years, right? And, it's something that I know wears down on him, even though it's physical, it's also emotional and mental. And once you get into that state, it's really hard to pull yourself up, but you have to find a way. What makes you happy? I know he's got some grandkids, right? Maybe his grandkids can come and visit. Maybe he likes music. Maybe somebody can read to him. Maybe he can read for himself, right? He has his own private life. This isn't about Jordan Peterson. This was about me finding a topic of discussion. And I went in and I did that, and I came up with the storyline of Pinocchio when he went to save his father, right? Who was in the whale. And I went, oh my goodness. And it was something that I was delving into today in the conversation because I feel like I'm doing in this partnership, right? That, it just seems like such a coincidence to me that I grew up in the family that I did. And I was so much my father's daughter, right? Even not woke to any of these ideas. I was such my father's daughter. And I really felt like it was a message for me. And I think after my live show, I'll probably be doing my cleanup for the evening and I'll be contemplating it, right? But that's exactly what I did. And it was something I used to do all the time when I was a little kid, right? And it never seemed to fail that somehow there was some motivational, inspirational answer for me in doing that. So I'll put that back down because I was going to, oh, we might as well. Darn. It came across my mind. We might as well do it. So let's just go into the book and do exactly that and see what comes of it, okay? We're going to do this. How do you need to be spoken to? What do you need to take from people? What are you putting up with or pretending to like from duty or obligation? Consult your resentment. Okay. That did not inspire me, but it did take me back to the conversation of yesterday where we did talk a little bit about resentment, right? That wasn't on my mind in any way today. But when he was saying, what are you putting up with or pretending, right? And we were talking about how important it is to be genuine, to have a voice, right? When you're not feeling good emotionally, physically, mentally, that you're able to voice that without feeling guilty, without feeling that you're burdening anybody. Because, like I said, if people don't know that something's up, right? Even if they sense it, right? Like walking down the sidewalk, oh, how you doing? Fine, right? You can sense when somebody is not doing well, but they just don't want to unload their problems on you. But if you can go a little bit further in that, go, oh, I got a little something in that. I do that all the time. Ooh, I got a little something in that. What's going on? Right? You're giving them permission, right? You've made that choice, that decision that you want them to relieve and release a little bit in what's keeping them down, right? Because if you can lift them up a little bit, it gets them closer to the balance. Maybe not the high, 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 but if you can get them to the point where they're at this, at the very least, that would give them a good sleepy. That would make it so that they wouldn't feeling like they're not totally hopeless, that there's nothing that can be done about it, right? Maybe to the point where they think everything's going to be okay. Everything, we can manage this. We can manage this. And if we can manage this, maybe we could turn on the radio, right? Or do the YouTube playlist music. Maybe we can go out and sit out in the backyard and listen to the birds. Maybe you can get a chore done that you've been putting off forever, because if right in the moment it won't feel like it's fun, but it will take you away into the project. And once that project or that responsibility is done, that sense of accomplishment will bring you up another notch, will make you feel a whole lot better, right? Okay, you guys, let's grab a card, go into it for a few minutes. We are going to do one of 54 powerful words, you guys. And it's always the first thing that comes to my mind, right? It's always the first thing that comes to my mind. And we go into it for a few minutes. Sometimes it's pertinent to the conversation, sometimes it's not. I hope everybody has a great day tomorrow. If you want to pop in on Sunday, I have another live show, Chatters Live. I do it every Sunday. Tammy is one of my moderators and friends that hang out with us Sunday night. Great crew, a crew that's been with me for a very long time. And yeah, Tammy just settled into that crew just perfectly. Yeah, so if you want to come and hang out with us Sunday, you're more than welcome. Even if you just want to hang out in the background, you're welcome to do that too. But if you want to come in and say hi, you'll get enveloped in a moment. You might stick around for a little while. If not, I'll be back on Monday, 9 p.m. Central. Here's the word. Believe. Oh my goodness. Here we go. Believe is the foundation that makes everything possible. Right? I didn't say that properly. Believe is the foundation that makes all things possible. Right? A little bit of belief in the things that don't seem possible. Right? A little bit of belief in the things that don't seem possible. And that's saying, give it a shot, to try, right? It won't hurt, right? Might not cost any money, might just take a little bit of energy. You can make that choice. You can believe, right? In believing that it's possible, right? It makes all things possible. It's the foundation. It's the one thing that you need. It's the one thing you need, right? If you don't have belief, that's your foundation, right? That makes it so that it puts you into that state of mind of, well, I hate, I'm not even going to use that word. I was going to say hopelessness, right? But if you can believe and you have that foundation, a strong foundation of belief, it took me a long time to get to belief. It really, really did. But it gets more compounded every day because I've built that foundation from the ground up with so many different resources, so many different tools, right? So many different tools. And I built that foundation. And, it gives me that idea, it gives me that belief that it can be done. Anything that I want to put my attention to, anything that I choose and just put one foot in front of another in that direction, that because I have those tools, because I have a strong foundation, that all things are possible. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. I will be back Sunday night if you want to hang out, like I said. If not, I'll be back on Monday. You guys have a great weekend and talk to you soon.